Hey, chiropractors, welcome to Modern Chiropractic Mastery with your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, where we discuss the latest in marketing, business, and professional growth with some of the leading experts in the industry. Hey, docs, welcome to another episode of Modern Chiropractic Mastery. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, and today I'm excited to bring Dr. Steven Fransen back onto the show. He was actually one of our early guests, I think, in our first 10 episodes back in probably early middle of 2017. So it's been about 7 years. And this particular episode, we talk about the 4 seasons of a chiropractic career. And just like in life, there's stages of life and there's stages of the career, and it is important, depending on what your vision is and your goals, is to move along into different seasons of a chiropractic career. And Dr. Fransen is one of those who has done that. And he is from the Remarkable Chiropractor. He's built and sold practices, and he's going to dive into the 4 seasons of a chiropractic career. And we talk about other aspects as well. And one of the cool things we bring up in this particular episode is the percentage of the U.S. population that is deemed to be entrepreneurial, and maybe the percentage that is within the chiropractic profession, which is higher. And I think because chiropractic self selects. And so we dive into the 4 seasons of a chiropractic career. And as this episode comes out, we are shortly going to be releasing in November of 2024 a how to get to 30K per month in revenue in practice. And I know many of you are above that, but I know a lot aren't. And I think that is a big number to get to one of the next seasons of your chiropractic career. And we're going to really break that down in an online course format that's going to drip out to you. And it's going to be very well thought out and actionable, not going to just be theoretical or just random lessons. It's going to be methodical and step by step to help you get there so that you can get to the next season of life. Just keep a lookout for that. I'm not going to send you anywhere right now, but just look in our Facebook group, Modern Chiropractic Marketing. You can join our Facebook group. There's 4,800 chiropractors in there. You could go to our website, modernchiropracticmarketing.com, to keep tabs on that. If you're on our email list, I'll be emailing you. But probably the easiest way right now is just get into the Facebook group. There's a lot of great information that is in there from a lot of great chiropractors. All right, without further ado, here is my interview with Dr. Steven Fransen. All right, excited to have Steven Fransen on the call here. People may not know, but we had a podcast episode probably 6 or 7 years ago, early on in the
way
infancy
back
of
down.
this, of this podcast. A lot has happened over that time, but since it's been a while, let's reintroduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself, personally and professionally.
Yes, I'd love that. First, thank you so much for asking me back. My dad always says it's one thing to be asked to come over. It's another thing to be asked back. So I appreciate that, man. And I want to share just a quick Dr. Kevin story in this podcast. I wrote you this. I don't know if you remember. Probably it was close to about a year ago, where I was at one of our live events, one of our Remarkable Practice live events. And as I was standing in the back of the room getting ready for Friday night to really kick off, right? So I was mic'd up and ready to take the stage, and this young guy comes up to me and he's like, shakes my hand. He's like, Dr. Fransen, I'm so excited to meet you in person. He's like, I want you to know that, you've changed my life. I love your podcast. I love the coaching and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, thanks so much, man. I love to hear that. I love to meet people in person. And he's like, I'm like, how'd you find us? Who referred you over? And it was like, oh, I listened to Dr. Kevin Christie's podcast, and that's where I heard you for the first time. So thank you, man. It was just
Hey,
so
my
awesome
pleasure.
to have that full cycle completed like that. So thanks a lot. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm a chiropractor. I am been a chiropractor for about 30 years now. I'm married to my favorite chiropractor, Dr. Camilla Fransen. She and I met back at Life University about 30 years ago. It's just crazy to say it. We went through school together. We did an internship together in Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
We did an associateship position together in Virginia. And then we opened up the original Remarkable practice in Boston, Massachusetts, just north of Boston, which is where I'm from. She's from Sweden. I'm from Boston. We wanted to be close to one of our families so that we can take care of our families. So we inspired both of her sisters to become chiropractors. So they're over in, at least one of them's in Stockholm, taking care of their family over there, and the other one's down in New Jersey. So
Nice.
yeah, we've got 8 chiropractors in our family, and I think we're raising a couple more. So yeah, we're the chiropractic Cosa Nostra up here in the Northeast.
Nice.
Our practice was phenomenal. We were just truly blessed. Great success in Beverly, Massachusetts. We attribute that success to serious clinicians, right? So we want better health outcomes for our people. We took patient education very, very seriously. We called it the double-edged sword. We gave people back hope by teaching them the truth about what they should expect from their health and what's possible, and how their body really works and how their body really heals. And then we gave them back personal responsibility, right? So we taught them that behaviors matter and they matter a lot. So we taught them, what to start doing and what to stop doing. And a big part of that was getting their spine and nervous system checked regularly. So we delivered excellent care, educated our patients, and then everything else was systems. I'm the systems guy, so we systematized everything. Everything should be systematized: attraction, conversion, retention, team building, collections, and I think my superpower is building world class teams. And a big part of that was our associate doctor program. So we had almost 40. We had 39 associate doctors over about a 17-year period. And it's not, I like to say it's not because I'm a horrible boss and they quit and I had to replace them, but it was more of like a 2-year apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So we could raise up and train up and launch all these doctors into the world to reproduce what we did. And really, that's where I fell in love with developing chiropractors and teaching them the systems and the processes that help you become more successful, which means make a bigger impact, and make a bigger income. And that's where I fell in love with coaching. So
Mhm.
that's really where the Remarkable Practice was born, and taking all those doctors through all those cycles. So at one point, I had pretty much maxed out what you can do, or at least what I could do in
Mhm.
a brick and mortar business, and still had a lot of rubber on the tires and wanted to give more to humanity and do more to develop chiropractic around the world. So started the Remarkable Practice coaching business, and we've been blessed again for the
Yeah.
second time in my life. I get to say I'm doing exactly what God hardwired me to do, and that's coaching and developing chiropractic teams. So we now have thousands of doctors in our ecosystem all around the world. We have 15 coaches. We coach everybody on the team, from the CEOs and the COOs and the office managers and clinic directors and the DCs and the associate doctors and all the CAs, all the way down to the front desk. Everyone on the team we have coaching programs for, and we've just had so much fun doing this and creating what is now known as the Remarkable Practice coaching business. So here we find ourselves, Kev.
I
So
love it. And I wanted to touch on something you mentioned about having, I think, 39 associates over a period of time. It kind of reminds me of a story I heard about McKinsey Institute, which is for people listening, like a research institute that's massive. I mean, it's a multi-billion, multinational company. But one of the things that they've interestingly done with branding is that a lot of people leave McKinsey Institute, but everybody that leaves McKinsey Institute always reference that I used to work for the McKinsey Institute. And it
yeah,
actually they leave on good terms. They try to get people to graduate in a sense from McKinsey Institute to a certain extent. And when they go out, they want them to obviously talk highly about that. And it actually has been part of the positioning and branding
right,
for the McKinsey Institute. And it sounds like
right.
that's kind of been something that you've been able to achieve, which is pretty cool.
It's exactly what we set out to do. I'll say one thing. It was the right thing for me to do with our
Mhm.
business. It may not be the right thing for everyone to do. And, probably quick criteria is, do you love to coach and develop people?
Right.
Right. Because for some docs, that's not what resonates with them. It's just, I'm a natural born coach. I love doing it. So for me, I found my stride there, and I really loved developing chiropractors. And it allowed me, because I got that reputation of being able to take those top doctors,
Mhm.
early in their careers, and groom them and accelerate their success. And they knew my plan was I was kicking them out, right? So I was launching
Yeah.
them after 2 years. So you could actually really attract all comers, whether they're what we call caregivers or business builders or even
Mhm.
entrepreneurs. We were able to take all comers and make sure that they had a track to follow. And it was about them achieving their success and their personal, professional, and financial goals.
Well, yeah, and it's gonna be exciting. We're gonna talk about the 4 seasons of a chiropractic career, which is a framework you've developed. And you mentioned, the first one is launch. I'm gonna give a little preamble on that, and it's fascinating, and I'd love to hear your wisdom from it. But we've heard the term in raising a kid, failure to launch, right? It's the 31-year-old that's still living with parents and hasn't really, left the nest egg there. And I'm concerned a little bit, seeing that a little bit in the profession sometimes is almost that failure to launch with the young DC. Are you seeing that a little bit, or what's your take on the? I know a lot of the DCs were in a tough bind with COVID, and that's where they were learning, or they're getting out of school at that time. What are you seeing from the 20-something-year-old crowd?
It's a really it's an astute question. Okay. So, but it's also a very complex thing that we can definitely tackle here. So
Mhm.
I'll try to do it from a high level. And if anybody has any deeper questions, of course, you can reach out to me. So here's what we've discovered, right? So I've got a coaching business, the Remarkable Practice, right? So having worked with 10,000 chiropractors and helping them grow their practices and become more sophisticated businesses, expansion demands people power, right? So they start creating teams and building, and very often that involves going from build to scale. So they're adding associate doctors, et cetera.
Mm.
So because we did that so successfully, so many coaching clients come to us for that specific reason. Hey, I want to figure out
Mhm.
the associate doctor thing, right? So at the end of the day, what we found was their inability to find associate doctors and other A players for their team
Mm.
became an extraordinary bottleneck for them as a client to grow their business. So that
Yeah.
became the constraint of the business, or the limiting reagent, if you will, right? That became problematic for me, right? So as
Mhm.
we're building this coaching business, I don't want to put a ceiling on our clients' ability to grow and go and be more and more successful over time. So I said, you know what, we need to solve that problem. So to scratch our own itch, we actually created a separate and distinct business called Chiro Matchmakers, which is under the parent company Ideal Team. Chiro
Mhm.
Matchmakers is all about helping people find ideal players to build an ideal team inside of chiropractic specifically, right? So it's a separate and distinct company that I was one of the founders of and helped form to solve this problem. So
Yeah.
I'm only telling you this because I want you to understand my credentials when I say what I'm about to say. Okay.
Mhm.
So when we're placing chiropractors, what we recognize is that there are different roles inside of a chiropractic office, right? So just like you'd play different roles on a basketball court or in a band, right? There's different roles that call for different sets of responsibilities, which call for different sets of skills, talent, a different genius. Would you agree? Like
Yeah.
there are domains in a practice. There's attraction or lead generation. There's conversion,
Mhm.
that's sales. There's delivery, which is creating value and delivering value, retention. There's team building. There's the business office, financials. Those are the 5 domains of a practice. Each of those domains have roles tucked up underneath them, right? And those roles have responsibilities organized underneath them. So what I'm getting at is there are different types of geniuses inside of each practice. Now, my philosophy is that we're building football teams, not ski teams.
Mhm.
Okay. A ski team is a team of experts, right? So everybody's using the same skis and the same poles. They're skiing the same lines, the same gates, the same outfit, and they're just racing against the clock. Ready, go, ready, go, ready, go, right? Those are just experts, right? So fantastic, right? A football team is different than a ski team because they're not just experts. They're not just expert football players. They're actually specialists in their position.
Mhm.
Like, so if you were to look at a nose guard versus a wide receiver, right? So a quarterback versus the kicker, right? So a D lineman, right? So each one of these is a very, very specific set of responsibilities, skill sets, experience, and physical attributes, right? So where each position calls for a very specific human. Would you agree?
Yep.
We call those the genius, right? So
Mhm.
same thing in a business and definitely inside of a chiropractic business. So what we've done, Kev, is we've identified that there are, in essence, 3 different types of geniuses in chiropractic when it comes to
Mhm.
DCs. And when I say this, you're going to go, yep. Like
Mhm.
every chiropractor we know is going to fit into one of these 3 buckets and they're all awesome. Okay.
Mhm.
One is the caregiver, one
Okay.
is the business builder, and one is the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Okay. So the caregiver is the person that got into chiropractic because they wanted to do the doctoring. They love the doctoring. They want to do consultation, examination. They want to do analysis. They love their technique. They love adjusting, patient care, patient education. They love the one on one, right? So they love the doctoring piece of it, right?
Mhm.
So that caregiver got into chiropractic because they wanted to be a doctor. And they had a bit of a holy shit moment at one point in school. They're like, wait a minute, I it sounds like I also have to be a business owner, right? Like, and that to them was terrifying because they looked and they were like, "Ooh, man, all of the risk associated with that, like creating things from bed, that's really stressing me out," right? So that sounds a lot like probably a lot of chiropractors that awesome clinicians. Can I say it this way? Hopeless business people, right?
Yeah.
So they never signed up for that, frankly. On
Yeah.
the other end of the spectrum is the entrepreneur, okay? Guys like you and me
Mhm.
that no matter what we did, we'd start businesses, right? By the
Yeah.
grace of God, we were called to chiropractic. So we started chiropractic businesses, right? So we love the risk. right?
Mhm.
So we have that gene that the stress actually energizes us, right? So I don't want to speak for you, but I bet this is true, right? It's
No,
like,
it does.
yeah,
Yes, for
you'd get
sure.
bored stiff if you weren't in charge, if it weren't all up to you, right? So like we love the idea of making something from vapor, hiring, firing, running teams, being the rainmaker, right? So that's
Mhm.
the that's the high risk tolerant entrepreneur, right? So
Yep.
we love chiropractic, love taking care of people, and we love owning, starting, and running businesses, right? That's the other end of the spectrum, right? In the middle, there's a bit of a hybrid, and that is the business builder.
Mhm.
They are happy to take care of patients. They love being a chiropractor. They're extroverted. They like to attract, convert, and retain patients. They love building a practice. What they don't want is they don't want to start and own a business.
Mhm.
And we recognize there's a difference between a practice and a business, right? So they're hardwired to say, if you owned a business, you could hire a business builder or a caregiver, right? So
Yep.
a business builder would be somebody that you'd say, Dr. Kevin, I'm hiring you to build a business, excuse me, build a practice inside of my business.
Mhm.
To the caregiver, you're saying, I'm hiring you to be the doctor here and you're going to deliver the care that we sold, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
you focus on that, on the extremes. Does that make sense when I say it that way? So
Perfect sense.
the
Yep.
3 different buckets, and I'm guessing
Yep.
that every chiropractor that you know would fit
Mhm.
squarely into one of those 3 buckets. So, the instincts around this are usually right,
Mhm.
but we don't guess, we test. And you can
Mhm.
actually test the human mind, and it's
Mhm.
like doing a blood test to find out how somebody's hardwired
Yep.
because God makes entrepreneurs. God
Mhm.
makes caregivers and makes business builders. It's like righty and lefty. You're not
Mhm.
born lefty and become a righty. You're not born a righty and say, one day I'm going to grow up and become a lefty. It's just how you're hardwired. So you can actually test for this. And there's
Mhm.
3 tests that we do. One is
Mhm.
the cognitive test, one is
Okay.
the affective test, and
Yep.
one is the conative test with an N. So
Yep.
cognitive is what do you know, like boards.
Mhm.
Affective is what do you love? What type of work energizes you, like strengths finders.
Yep.
And then finally, conative, which is how do you behave?
Mhm.
How do you take action? And Kevin, this is my favorite one
Mhm.
because we hire people for personality and philosophy, aligned philosophy and technical skills, but we
Yep.
fire for behavior.
Mhm.
So I want to know, how is this person hardwired to behave before I put them on the field, right? To
Yep.
take a position, right? So that conative profile is really critical to answer the question that you just asked me.
Mhm. And do
Right.
you use
So
the Colby index for that, or do you use something else?
love Colby.
Yep.
Colby's a great one. Okay. But
Mhm.
we use PDP, we use ProScan. That's the one that, we tried them all.
Yep.
We had probably 15 of them that we used for a while. And now we've done 10,000 of these. And it
Mhm.
just fits specifically the chiropractor, but generally the chiropractic office, but specifically the chiropractor tells me everything I need to know. So
Yep.
PDP ProScan is the one that we use for a cognitive profile. And this is important in a very long answer to your
Mhm.
question,
No,
but
that's
I
great.
respectfully want to address this because it's a
Mhm.
massive issue in
Mhm.
chiropractic. Okay.
Yep.
And I'm going to say this, and it's going to be wildly unpopular
Mhm.
and bring some people some real peace.
Yep.
Okay. We've done so many of these tests, like I said, about 10,000 chiropractors. Just south of 75% of chiropractors are hardwired to be caregivers,
Mhm.
and about
That's
15% are hardwired to be entrepreneurial.
okay.
7.5% of humanity, they say, is hardwired to be an entrepreneur. And I think that chiropractic as an industry has a tendency to attract more of the entrepreneurs, which is why I think we're seeing about 15% entrepreneurs. That makes sense.
Yep.
The balance in the middle is that oddity, that business builder that's extroverted but not dominant,
Mhm.
loves to attract, convert, and retain, but doesn't want to be in charge. They don't have to be the boss like you and I,
Yep.
right? So
Okay.
the caregiver is incredibly stressed
Mhm.
by the thought, the idea, and the reality of having to start, own, and run a business,
Yep.
right? So when you asked, and the question I heard, and hopefully it was the right thing I heard,
Mhm.
was, are you finding that there's a lot of doctors that are sort of failure to launch, like go off and
Mhm.
start their own practice? That's how I heard that.
Yep.
And I just want to make sure that what you're hearing from me is physiologically, psychologically, about 75% of chiropractors shouldn't own their own business. They're
Mhm.
just not hardwired to do it. And the good news, bad news story here is the bad news is most of our profession doesn't understand this. Okay.
Mhm.
And, there's a sense of like maybe, can I say shame or guilt or embarrassment if somebody doesn't own their own practice, right? You hear this kind of attitude around like, well, I don't even own my own practice. I'm just an associate. I'm just a chiropractor here, right? I don't own my own practice. Here's what I know to be true. Neurosurgeons don't own hospitals, right? So neurosurgeons are employed by hospitals to do brain
Mhm.
surgery, right? So there's no brain surgeons walking around your town hanging their head saying, I'm just a brain surgeon. I don't own the hospital, right? So as a profession, it's time for us to grow up and to
Mhm.
recognize that the reason we exist is to deliver chiropractic care, right? So never say that somebody's just a chiropractor or just an associate doctor. All they do here is adjust kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
That is the reason we exist, right? So we need to learn how to recognize that, edify that, and compensate that in such a way where, as a business owner, we recognize that our purpose is to create environments where people will be more successful
Mhm.
with us than without us. And that means creating an environment where we can hire those awesome caregivers and business builders who are
Mhm.
not hardwired to be entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and give them a place where they can be wildly successful, fulfilled, and happy.
Let's take a break from today's episode and announce our first sponsor. This is going to be Propel Marketing and Design. I've known Darcy Sullivan for years. We've worked hand in hand on my websites. I don't trust anybody else to do the search engine optimization. She does a great job. There's so much to it. A lot of the lingo and the words are beyond my comprehension, but it's just amazing work that she does. And if you're really going to get results with Google, you have to make sure your website is SEO optimized. And I really don't want you doing it yourself as a chiropractor. So you just have to have this type of stuff done. And if you're looking to get more organic online traffic that pulls in new patients, Propel Marketing and Design is currently offering chiropractors who listen to this podcast a free SEO website review. The free review will help you uncover methods that will improve your website and boost your search engine visibility. Head over to propelyourcompany.com/chiropractor and schedule your free SEO website review. You won't regret it. She gets great results. Your website needs this. Your search results need this. Head on over there to propelyourcompany.com/chiropractor to get your free SEO website review. And you mentioned something about compensation, and I kind of wrote down here in my notes as you were speaking is do you feel like there's a disconnect between the compensation, the money that that an associate can make? And I see that a lot of times they would love to just be an associate in a practice and grow in there and really do that part and feel congruent with it. But then at the same time, they're like, well, I got to make 150 or $200,000 and live in today's society. And the only way to do that theoretically is to open up my own practice. But then unfortunately, what I see a lot of times is they make that leap thinking that that's how they're going to get to the promised land, and they weren't well equipped for that. And they actually oftentimes make less money chronically as a practice owner than they would have if they found a good clinic to work on and be that clinician. Are you seeing that disconnect financially?
That's right, 100%.
Yeah.
So the statistics are is in 2022, the average chiropractor in the US made just north of 147,000. So let's assume that the average full-time chiropractor made
Hmm.
150,000. And that's going to include both owners and associate doctors, right? So
Hmm.
150K is the average, right? So what I know to be true is the average associate doctor makes less than that, right?
Yeah.
So, but what we've seen in the last 5 years, I think we've placed 250 odd chiropractors last year. The average chiropractic salary has gone. We've seen it go up from like 69,000 up to like 93,000, right? So
Hmm.
right now the joint is $100,000 starting salary for a DC.
Yeah.
So just to give you context on that, if you don't think 1,500 joints by the end of next year is going to influence the pull of DCs and what they're getting paid, you need to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, some people sitting there going, "What, 100 grand for an associate?" Yeah, 100%. We have so many of we have associates in our system that make $250,000. I mean, if
Hmm.
you look at some of the bigger, better organizations like a Chiro One up out of Chicago, they run a
Hmm.
fantastic organization, and their average chiropractor is making about 265, and they're not owners, right? They're
Yeah.
associate doctors inside of a corporation, and their top earners are doing over 800,000, not as an owner, right? So as an
Hmm.
associate doctor. So I know that those numbers seem crazy to a lot of people that are listening here, but at the end of the day, you just have to model your business properly.
Yeah.
because it is a wildly successful and very productive and profitable relationship if
Mhm.
you get it right.
Yeah, and modeling your business the right way you mentioned is like, I'm in kind of the evidence informed crowd of the profession, and a lot of our listeners and people we kind of collaborate with and talk to. And I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole, but there's a whole problem with the way they're structuring their business and the actual capacity of what they can bring in revenue. And
Right.
so a lot of the owners are not making six figures, and so then they try to pigeonhole, but they want the freedom. I think they're 40, they become 40 years old and they're not making what they want, but they want the freedom of having an associate. So they bring on someone and then they kind of want to, have these cockamamie schemes of compensation and everything. And it just ends up burning them. And so it's definitely a problem. We probably need a part two episode on just that alone, but let's
I'm
get
very
into
happy
the,
to come back and do that because I'm super
yeah,
passionate about this piece of it, because
yeah,
it is literally, there's only two choices here: win, 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 lose, lose, lose.
yeah,
It's the only two choices because if you do it right, it's a win for the owner, it's a win for the associate, and it's a win for
mhm,
chiropractic
yeah.
because it's a win for the patients, it's a win for the team, it's a win for the practice, right? So
Mhm.
if you don't do this right, the only choice is lose, lose, lose. So it
Yeah.
is a lose for the owner, it's a lose for the associate, and it's a lose for chiropractic.
Mhm.
68% of these relationships go sideways, which is a
Yeah,
terrible statistic.
it
That
is,
is a
and I think
terrible black eye.
and it was one of I had Jay Greenstein and I, hosted a salon dinner in Vegas when I spoke at Parker Vegas this past year, and Alan Miner was at the dinner with us, and I believe you guys are partnered on the Chiro
Yep,
Matchmakers
that
aspect?
chiropractic. Yep, yep.
And I was surprised to talk to him, and he said, like, a lot of times when you guys get on the phone with an owner doctor that's looking for an associate, you'll ask the revenue question, and if it's not at a certain number, like, you're not ready to hire an associate. It's just flat out, and it's not the answer that the owner wanted to hear when they got on the phone with you, but you're just trying to prevent that lose, lose, lose.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
there's most chiros, and I'm really trying to couch my language here. So most chiropractors are brilliant clinicians, but
Mhm.
hopeless business people only because we've never been educated. We've never been taught. Like
Mhm.
when you spend 7, 8, 9 years studying the human body, something's got to give, right? So
Yeah.
most chiros were never taught the economics of a business. Like if you do not understand economics, you do not understand business. If you do not, and if
Mhm.
you don't speak accounting, you don't understand your business, right? So
Yeah.
there are very specific economic, we call them breakpoints, that you have to understand in your business. So there's a metric that most people don't know, and you absolutely need to know to do this well. It's called RPE, or revenue per employee ratio. The revenue per employee ratio is incredibly informative around the health of your business, right? So we talk about like wellness markers like heart rate variability, right? HRV, right? As a wellness marker for how well your autonomic nervous system is adapting readily and abruptly to stress, right? So HRV would be a wellness test, right?
Mhm.
RPE is the HRV of a chiropractic business, right? So RPE, or revenue per employee ratio. Your business as a single brick and mortar business should be seeing $250,000 per full-time employee equivalent. The breakpoints are every 250,000. So 250, 500, 750, 100, 1,000,000, 250, right? So those are called breakpoints. And in this situation, in this conversation, we're talking about team building. In this conversation, the breakpoints are, where does your team start to break, right?
Yeah.
So we all understand pain lines, right? There's an inferior pain line and a superior pain line. The
Mhm.
inferior pain line is, if we dip below these numbers, the business breaks economically, right? Superior pain line is, if the business grows, we're at capacity and it starts to break, right?
Yeah.
So wait times back up, new patients can't get in, you name it. People quit because they're overwhelmed. Superior and inferior pain lines. These are economic factors, and you need to understand this in your business. The break points, for every 250,000 per full-time employee equivalent, you've got to be able to figure that out and say, where am I in my hiring arc, right? So if you've got 2 employees, so it's the owner does not count. So the owner plus 2 employees
Mhm.
is you plus 2 people, right? So 2 times 250 is 500,000. So if you're
Yeah.
at 500,000, it's 1 doctor and 2 CAs, for example, you're at that second break point, you're going to be at capacity.
Mhm.
Right? So you're already behind in hiring your next person because you want to hire ahead of your capacity so you continue to grow and pull the business forward.
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Perfect.
So
Mhm.
you hire into that next power band of growth. And so the way I teach docs is, for every $20,000 per month in collections, it should be a trigger for you to start the hiring process. So 20,000 a month would times 12 would be 240. So you're
Mhm.
approximating 250,000, right? So if you get to $20,000 a month in collections on average, 20,000 times 12, excuse me, for every 20,000. So at 40,000, you're at 40,000 times 12, which is 480. So now you're approximating 500,000. At
Mhm.
$60,000 a month, you're now 60 times 12 is 720. You're approximating breakpoint three, 750,000.
Yeah.
Do you see it? So as you're
Yep.
trying to figure out like when do I start the
Mhm.
hiring process? Because it's
Mhm.
not easy to hire, is it? Right.
Yeah.
So this is an example of once you understand the economics of the business, you can model the business properly.
Mhm.
Okay. And of course, this is only one number.
Yeah.
I'll say one number is a fact, two numbers are a story. Like in the Remarkable Practice, we don't just coach people on how to build their practice, we coach them about the business.
Mhm.
So they understand how to run the business, regardless of how you practice.
Mhm.
You need to know how to run the business. Okay. And the conversation you and I are having right now is a business conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. That was good. Let's take a short break for one of our great sponsors, TrackStat. It is a new type of software plugin for your EHR that combines patient communication, marketing, automation, and statistics with patient and employee tracking. Built by chiropractors for chiropractors, it shows your team what to focus on each day. See patient visit habits, missing information, unpaid bills, insurance collection visit average, and more. Great visibility of data so you can focus on filling your office with your best patients. When you can see what your staff and patients are doing or not doing and take action accordingly, your profits naturally grow. Take TrackStat for a test drive in your office with our free trial. Not a techie, no problem, we can help. To get started on your free trial, visit trackstat.org and watch the demo. That is trackstat.org. And I want to go and kind of segue into the 4 seasons of the chiropractic career. I think we really tackled the first one, which is launch. Can you state the next three, and then we'll dive into it?
Absolutely. So we created this construct called the 4 seasons of the chiropractic career to really organize conversations like this,
Mhm.
right? And as well as our content and all of our programs and all of our clients, our coaches, our experts, et cetera. Everybody gets organized into these 4 seasons, right? So the first season is launch, which is your first year in business, not your first year in practice, your first year in business. Then there's build, which is you're an established practitioner, but you are a solopreneur, right? So you are the solo practitioner, your sole practitioner. You are the one that owns the practice, but you are the one that's head down, bum up, taking care of all the patients, right? So
Yeah.
scale is when you take that job that you love and turn it into the business you've always wanted, right? By adding multiple practitioners. That's either done through partnerships or more typically through associate doctors, right? So
Mhm.
and it also includes if you're an enterprise, in other words, multiple brick and mortars, right? So that's in scale, right? And then finally,
Yeah.
the fourth is exit. So
Mhm.
when you're going to scale, when you go from build to scale, this is when you take the job and turn it into the business, right? So,
Mhm.
and a business is scalable, durable, and transferable, right? Scalable means you can do more, give more, love more, serve more, make a bigger impact, make a bigger income, but everything doesn't have to be done by you, right? You learn how to
Mhm.
leverage, right? Leverage other people, team members, systems, technology, communications. Durability is the next level. Okay.
Mhm.
So everybody does some level of scalability. Durability is what's rare, which is where you can give more, love more, serve more, make a bigger impact, make a bigger income, even
Mhm.
in your absence, which is
Yeah.
what you just described as people trying to get their time freedom back. Right. So
Mhm.
as people mature in practice, they're like, man, I got to get some of this off my desk. I got to share these
Mhm.
responsibilities. I got to free up my time. It'd be nice to be home for dinner time, bath time, bedtime, right? I'd like to get my weekends back, maybe go on vacation, right? Like without having to shut the place down, right? So
Mhm.
you want an expensive vacation, shut the practice down while you're gone, right? That's the best
Yeah.
way to pay for your vacation twice, right? So that's durability, right? So that's what we
Mhm.
call the remarkable standard of a remarkable business, durability. And then there's the third piece, which is transferability, which is
Mhm.
transferable value, where a sophisticated buyer could come in and find your business very attractive because it has transferable value. Because that 4 season exit, this is just a black eye in chiropractic, right? So, because
Mhm.
most people try to go from build to exit, and build does not exit well because nobody wants to buy your job, right? They
Yeah.
want to buy a business. So, launch, build, scale, and exit. Like I said, we organize all of our content, programs, our coaches, our experts, all of our clients are in those 4 seasons. And our job is to optimize the season you're in and help you navigate gracefully and profitably into the next season.
Yeah, I love that. Let's take a short break from today's episode to tell you about the best decision I've made in my clinic in the last 10 years. And that has been adding shockwave therapy to our clinic. The outcomes have been really impressive. Certain conditions we were struggling with in the past, we're now seeing results with the shockwave therapy for that. And second of all, the ROI has been really good. You know, when you make a big investment in something, you want to see a return. And we're seeing that return in clinical outcomes and in our investment. And that's been really nice to see. I chose Keenest Medical for 4 reasons. One is the technology is top notch. You have to have great technology. There's a lot out there that isn't quite up to snuff. The second thing is they have a really good clinical training. They have an exclusive partnership with Academy of Shockwave Excellence so that you can become clinically proficient in shockwave. You do need to get skilled at it. I think that's a big differentiator between practices that are getting great results and seeing the ROI is they have a great clinical aspect to that as well. So you want to get trained appropriately. Third is they have in-house service team for all of your technical support, which is key when you're investing in a machine like this. And then lastly, they have a very in-depth marketing and business support for you so that you can launch this into your practice effectively, that you can get that ROI on it, that you can get the clinical outcomes. And they also have really good financing options if you need that. So go to kinasmedical.com, KINAS medical.com, mention MCM podcast and receive a free shockwave in practice book with a purchase of a unit. So that's kinasmedical.com, KINAS medical.com, and mention MCM podcast. And then what would you say is the biggest or a couple of the biggest sticking points for the chiropractor getting from the build to scale? So I want to focus on that for the rest of the time we have. Like what are some of the things you're seeing, the kind of ceiling of complexity of getting from the build to the scale
It's
season?
such a great question because I love what Dr. Pete says, my partner in the Remarkable
Mm.
CEO podcast. He always says, we live and die in our transitions. We live or
Mhm.
die in the transitions, right? So, what we teach, the way we coach our clients is launch to build, build to scale, and scale
Mhm.
to exit, right? So recognizing there's an arc and you want to be looking ahead, right? So you understand the concept of begin with the end in mind, right?
Mhm.
So beginning, Stephen Covey taught it best. Begin with the end in mind. Have a very clear picture of what success looks like to you and begin with that vision in mind, right?
Yeah.
Because Kevin, ultimately this whole thing, launch to build, build to scale, scale to exit. This is all an oak tree conversation,
Mhm.
right? So, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? 50 years ago, right? When's the next best time to plant an oak tree? Today, right? Start
Yeah.
today, right? So this conversation we're having now is how do I build with an eye on scaling? And how do I
Mhm.
scale with an eye on exiting, right? So that's the oak tree conversation because
Yeah.
it's, compounding benefit. It's going to be really hard if you wake up one day and be like, I think I want to sell my practice this year.
Mhm.
I can tell you what, that's going to be a lot of pain. That's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of pain, very disappointment, very disappointing. It's a cold shower, right?
Mhm.
So you have literally got to be so intentional about building a business that would be attractive, dare I say, irresistible to your ideal buyer,
Mhm.
so that you create a horse race where you have ideal buyers that are competing with one another to buy your business, right? So
Mhm.
82% of practices will never sell. They'll shutter. Think about
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
82% of practices will shutter. They won't even sell. Okay. So not even a fire sale, they'll close. Okay. That to me is tragic. Right.
Mhm.
So here's what we know to be true. Traditionally, we see about 1,000 practices a year in the US transition. In other words, doctors go into exit.
Yeah.
Well, because of the confluence of three factors. Number one, the post-COVID hangover. Number
Mhm.
two, the aging baby boomer population, which is like the pig in the python of the aging populace moving along a timeline. They're aging out of the profession. And number three, this, let's call it pending economic uncertainty, right? So as people a bit jumpy, right?
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is over 2x increase in those doctors that are transitioning. So 2,000 a year in US only, which means in the next 5 years, we're going to see 10,000 chiropractors transitioning out.
Mhm.
And if 82% of those never sell and they just shutter, we're going to lose 8,000 chiropractors, and that would be tragic, right?
Hmm.
So this is why I'm very passionate about this.
Yeah.
So this whole conversation about building it to sell it is not only a one-day happiness thing, right?
Mhm.
So where like one day you'll be really happy that you did this. Thanks, Franson. Thanks for that, right? I'm so glad that I listened to you 5 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it is, and I built this thing to sell it. It's not just a one-day happiness thing the day you sell. It'll be a Monday happiness thing
Mhm.
because whether you're in build or you're in scale, even if you're in launch, launch to build, build to scale, scale to exit, you'll never regret building a business to sell it.
Yeah.
It's a great operational construct. Those businesses are more productive, they're more profitable, they're more fulfilling, they're more fun, right? So
Mhm.
I love this concept of begin with that end in mind and go through this build to scale, scale to exit process
Mhm.
intentionally.
I love that, and it's just a good framework, and it is definitely the path you have to get on, and you got to get on it sooner than later. And you were kind enough, you and your team, to give our audience a gift. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We'll put it in the show notes. Also, tell us the podcast that you and your co-host have. I'd love to hear that for our audience as well.
100%. So Dr. Pete Camiola, if you like this conversation, you're going to love our Remarkable CEO podcast, right? So it's the
Mhm.
Remarkable CEO podcast for chiropractors. I co-host that with Dr. Pete Camiolo. So we're about 5 years in now, almost 5 years of posting every Tuesday. So there's so much content there. Like I said, if you like today's conversation, you're going to love that. And we unpack what I'm about to give you guys in more detail. So
Mhm.
this will be a quick high level description. So what I'm going to give you guys is something called the practice value drivers cheat sheet. Okay. So the value drivers cheat sheet, which is a way for you to identify like, what are the things I could do to my practice today, starting now, that would make my business more attractive in the future to my ideal
Mhm.
buyer. Right. So selling a business is just like selling a house. In fact, I think it's 18 states in the country to be a business broker. You actually have to be a realtor, licensed realtor, because there's so many similarities and there's very often real estate involved, right? So if anybody's ever sold a house, you know what I'm about to say. When you go to sell a house, there's two checklists for you. One checklist is these are the things you have to do to sell a house. Step one, two, three, four, five, six. All right. There's a sequence of things that you have to do to sell a house legally, right?
Yeah.
There's also a second checklist. And the second checklist are these are the things that you could do to make the house more attractive to your ideal buyer. In other words, these are the things that you should do, right? So,
Yeah.
and there's a list of things you should do. Hey, you got to fix that roof. Hey, you got to fix that jacked up master bedroom, right? So that the tiles in the shower in the master bedroom, they got to go. The shag rug in the basement's got to go. Fix those cracked steps in front of the house. Fix that
Mhm.
mailbox. Do some landscaping, curb appeal. We all know the story, right? So it's like
Yeah.
fix your house up before you go to sell it, right? So
Mhm.
it's going to make your house more attractive to your ideal buyer, which does a few things. Number one, it increases the chances of that house ever selling.
Mhm.
Number two, if you attract your ideal buyer, never mind multiple ideal buyers, you start a horse race and that causes the price to go up, compresses the time, and
Mhm.
reduces the stress. Same thing when you go to sell your business. There's two lists. There's a roadmap of things that you have to do to sell the business. And then there's the list of things that you could do to make your business more attractive to your ideal buyer. In other words, these are the things that you should do, right? So if you make your business more attractive to your ideal buyer, now you are going to attract multiple ideal buyers who are going to be competing to buy your business, which drives the
Mhm.
price up, compresses the time, reduces the stress. So this cheat sheet, I'm like
Mhm.
a contractor buddy who's also a realtor that flips houses showing up at your house before you get it appraised. I'm like, Kev, you got to do this. You got to change this, do this. That's what this is. It's a cheat sheet of my 20 favorite things that you could do to your business that would really drive the value of the business by making your business irresistible to your ideal buyer. So we're going to give away that checklist. It's just a great starting point for these
Mhm.
docs.
I love it. That is great, and I really appreciate your time today. This was very valuable. We went down a path I wasn't expecting, but I think it was necessary, and our audience needed to hear some of that. And we'll probably have to dive into it some more. So I really appreciate you for your time and your wisdom today.
That's awesome, man. It's my purpose and pleasure to be here. And if you guys, I don't know how you exchange information, but if you have show notes where people can ask questions or make comments, if they reach out and be like, hey, man, have Franson back because I really like to hear him unpack that revenue per full time employee equivalent.
Yeah.
Like, how do you calculate full time employee equivalent? Right. Like I said, you can check us out on our podcast, or I'm very happy to come back and do a deeper dive on any part of what we talked about today.
Sounds great. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you want to make the shift from busy, broke, and broken to time-free and cash confident, or you just want to continue with the exponential growth, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com. Look at the MCM Mastery tab, watch the short video on there, and check out what we are doing now for evidence-informed chiropractors. We are equal parts coaching and marketing done for you. Yes, you shoot some videos, we help you with campaign strategies and ideas and really become a thought leader in your community. You shoot those videos, you send them to us, we produce, edit, and brand them to you. Then we distribute them through all of your channels. We also take them and we turn it into one good blog per month. And every other month, we have Darcy Sullivan producing a robust blog with a topic that you pick from her database to help with your SEO. So we essentially become your content marketing agency to make sure your practice is always having ethical, elegant content marketing to help grow your practice. On the coaching side, we also help you with everything from marketing ideas to business, communications, finances, anything practice growth, and really try to help prevent you from being stuck on that island. And we hold you accountable. We have a great group of doctors that are just doing amazing things, and we look forward to help you out to take that next step in your practice. So again, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com and learn more.